Namaste, Thoughts and Aphorism. And we read today aphorism number 7. And as we know, now we are reading aphorisms on knowledge and different aspects of knowledge. So, what we normally understand by knowledge is which in Indian thought is called as Panditya. Panditya is scholarly knowledge. Somebody who has read a lot, or somebody who has observed a lot and based on his observation forms his own typical philosophy or logical understanding of things. That person is regarded as knowledgeable. So Sri Aurobindo speaks of knowledge as what men call knowledge is the reasoned acceptance of false appearances. So now this is what at another place Mother says that science, our science presently, is a science of appearances. So what is meant by reasoned acceptance is that why she is using the word false appearances, because by default appearances are woven by the action of the senses on something which is out there, and the mind adds to it its own power to make forms. So individual mind is a subordinate thing from the cosmic mind. So how does the cosmic mind create things? It images them. It draws images from the image of truth. That's how we have the supermind, from where it draws the images. But they get distorted the moment they enter into the realm of the mind. Still in the spiritual mind, over mind, let's say, it does keep the image. But slowly as it begins to transmit the image, it's like a blueprint which the owner is transmitting down the line to the builders. So ultimately in the higher mind, these forms are formed and crystallized. So unless we go beyond the higher mind, we are trapped by the appearances, because the mind will keep on automatically, it's an automatic action of the individual mind which will keep on showing you what that it like by habitual groove, just like the vital driven by habitual motion reacts in a certain way. So to the mind keeps on building that image. But if we really look at it very objectively, even scientifically, what really is an image? I mean, everything in a certain sense is a perception. What is a perception? Perception, we all know that even it's a play of atoms, and how do these atoms build solid objects? So this is a mystery which people try to grapple, but the way the Upanishads, the Vedas explain it is very scientific and very logical, that there is that reality which is consciousness and energy primarily, and it throws out several particles out of itself. And these particles are received by the senses and the cosmic mind, but in the individual mind builds forms and images. It doesn't mean that human beings make forms, no. Human mind is only a particular action of the cosmic mind. But the difference is human mind has the potential to liberate itself from the snare of forms. But all other creatures don't have this. But provided the human mind undertakes the journey. So based on the forms which are basically appearances, conjured by the senses and the action of the mind, mind includes everything, memory, past association, everything. It draws its own conclusions. But obviously the appearances themselves are not real. It is the way the senses and the mind has perceived it. So that's where the whole catch lies. So that's why a being as great as Shankaracharya declared that, well, it's an illusion. Well, in a sense, it is an illusion. The Mother and Sri Aurobindo also say that it's an illusion, but not in the sense that it is unreal or non-existent. It is a distortion. And if you can go behind the appearances and see the real thing, here comes the beauty and the power. You may be able to change that appearance. That's where the whole trick lies. To take an example, you meet a person who outwardly is very uncouth. He can't speak sophisticated English. He has not studied the Shastras. And people have a tendency to pass judgment, and the person grows up believing this is what he is. But it takes one Shri Krishna to touch Kubja and say, but woman, you are beautiful. Now, this is a story which is very indicative. Or one Rama with his feet touching Ahilya and saying, you need not repent and suffer like this. Oh woman, rise to your Godhead. And she liberated. So these stories are, that is how the mother's action is. She keeps reminding us of our beautiful parts. And one of the signs that mother's work is becoming more and more active, dynamic, is that we, instead of being hypnotized by the weaknesses and defects, we start seeing possibilities within us and therefore in the world around. So this is the way yoga psychology works. But right now, to come back to the aphorism, what men call knowledge is the reasoned acceptance of false appearances. Wisdom. So what is wisdom? Wisdom looks behind the veil and sees. Meaning thereby, wisdom sees something which the senses do not perceive, which the mind does not conceive. It has this ability to see behind. Reason divides, fixes details and contrasts them. That's how we all know that. How does reason categorize things? Because reason has a tendency to classify. This is matter, this is inanimate, this is animate, this is man, this is animal, because it sees the differences. Based on that, it draws conclusions. The differences may be in form, differences may be in habit, differences may be in different ways, and we draw conclusions. But is it true? No, it is not true. At one place, Sri Aurobindo startles us by saying, next I will say that watches have life, and you will wonder, what am I saying? Watches have life. So many of us have experienced. You can form a rapport with them. You see in Sri Aurobindo's room how the watches stopped suddenly when he left the physical body, and at one point even mischievously. So there is life in what we call as inanimate. But senses do not see. Why? Senses see it is not moving. This is moving. This cannot reproduce. That can reproduce. Therefore this is living. This is not living. But non-living holds life back within itself. That's why it is non-living. Not because life doesn't exist. So here he says, wisdom looks behind the veil and sees. That's why Sri Aurobindo says, who is man? Man is God held within, imprisoned God. What does Messrs. Freud and company say? Man is nothing but chained animal. See, this is the difference. Chained animal is how reason will see. He has evolved from the animal, animal tendencies are there. But to see the imprisoned God, you need wisdom. So wisdom sees, reason divides, fixes details and contrasts them. Another problem of reason is reason can never conceive that which has not existed. It has to draw its data from the past. That is the problem. So therefore it doesn't allow for new knowledge to come in unless the new knowledge forces itself through such circumstances that you cannot but start investigating it. So that is a big challenge. That reason will not allow because it doesn't know any such thing. So reason divides, fixes details and contrasts them. Wisdom unifies, marries contrast in a single harmony. How does it unify? It doesn't unify by uniformity. For instance, wisdom says all is God. But then wisdom also says God the human, God the animal, God the cow, God the tiger, God the snake, God the fish, God the matter are different degrees and levels of manifestation of the one. So it arranges things in a certain way, wisdom. But in that hierarchy, it builds a harmony because after all, what is one cause of disharmony is things not in their place. Actually, all disharmony is that. Keep things in their place. Now, reason cannot understand that. Reason simply says this category, that category, that category. When it tries to say that all is one, it puts them all on a flat plate. This is the difficulty. But wisdom sees everything in its different degrees of manifestation and expression of the one. Therefore, wisdom can bring harmony, reason cannot. By its nature, it divides and contrasts. So the mother reminds us all that Sri Aurobindo writes about knowledge, reason, wisdom is said in order to bring us out of the rut of conventional thinking and, if possible, make us perceive the reality behind the appearances. How to do it, she will tell us that also, fortunately. But to start with, both science and spirituality tell us, do not be deceived by appearances. Appearances are deceptive. They have their own auchitya, they have their own justification. If a man is running at you with a sword, you have to hold the sword, fight, or whatever you have to do. But you don't brand him like, you may see equally the other way around. So that is how one has to look at things behind the appearances. Appearances have their own utility, but we must know it is not truth. It has its working utility. In typical Mayavad of Shankara, it's called as Vyahvarik, and there is a certain truth behind it, certain truth, not the entire truth. Then she says, as a general rule, with a very few exceptions, men are content to observe more or less accurately everything that happens around them, and sometimes within themselves, and to classify all these observations according to one superficial system of logic or another. The most superficial system of logic when we observe ourselves within is good and bad, most elementary. I am bad, I am good. Mostly it is swinging between the two. And similarly with us, is the most elementary classification. Similarly, we tend to classify things on the surface. And they call this organization, these systems, knowledge. It has never occurred to them, they have not even begun to perceive that all the things they see, touch, feel, experience are false appearances and not reality itself. The first step to move towards true knowledge, in fact, the mother says in the psychic education, is to know that the mind cannot judge spiritual things. In fact, mind cannot really judge anything. And yet we need it till we have the higher faculty. That we read in the previous one. That do not discard reason till intuition has begun to dawn. She is reminding us. The constant general argument is, but I see it, I touch it, I feel it. Consequently, it is true. That's what we have heard from childhood. But I have seen with my own eyes. I have heard that Ram abandoned Sita. Today we had that discussion, no? Somebody blaming Krishna that he didn't, what a ridiculous thing it is. That he didn't give attention to his family. That's why in his family Samb got misled, like a misguided person. He did all kinds of unspeakable things till finally he became instrumental in destroying the Yadav clan. So the conclusion was, don't be like Krishna. Give attention to your family. Now this is called stupidity. These are the kind of people who say, oh poor, look at Buddha's family, how much he suffered. Buddha did something wrong. This is how we have a most, I don't want to use a harsh term, but so I had that answer, but that's for another time. So briefly it was, see, to start with, spirituality is not transmitted necessarily by heredity, to start with this. And heredity plays a role. In heredity, you have father and mother both. Please don't blame Krishna alone to start with. As a starter, you taste. Second is that you say that Krishna didn't pay attention. Therefore, his children got waylaid. So Dhritarashtra gave so much attention to his children, and Pandavas, they got no attention from their father. Even mother for that matter. Because mother was busy in the Raj Bhavan to make sure she was there to safeguard their interest. But her way was very different. But father, they lost their father. So ideally, they should have been completely waylaid. And the Kauravas got so much attention. This is because he was quoting mythology. I said, this is the second part. Of course, mother has experimented transmitting spirituality through heredity and genetics. I must say, I know of some families who have, this is an experiment she has done. And I think it will happen. Because if this experiment succeeds, then it will save so much trouble. It means matter has accepted and received the possibility of the genes are ready to modify themselves. So it means that otherwise genes only transmit forms and some surface characters. So it's a great thing if it can happen. But surely this was not Krishna's idea of doing it. Thirdly, imagine Krishna like a father, Abbaji, who is looking after his children. What a Krishna he would be. And imagine Krishna abandoning Kurukshetra to look after his children like a typical father. Maybe he would have raised a better psalm, but the world would have lost and India would have lost and the Gita would have never been given to man. So this kind of foolish thing, the great ones choose for greater noble things. They don't choose to become like a typical father and rear their family because their concerns are much greater. So this is the thing, number 3. Number 4, we don't know why the great ones, the realized ones, keep certain people near them. Sri Ramakrishna once passingly mentioned, Jatil and Kutil, they too are kept near the realized ones. There is a reason for it. The Jatil, the complicated, the Kutil, those who deceive. He was asked, why are you keeping such people? He said, Jatil and Kutil have their own place. When mother gave this hint that when Chinmay was there near her and she used to have the urges to throw her, she says, I have kept her because, otherwise she would do so much more damage in the world. So who knows who was Sam, maybe an Asura, if you go back to his past life. And Shri Krishna had kept him that some of them you just remain tied to me with my kul. When I am leaving, I will destroy you guys in a very nice way. So we rush to judge. And we call it knowledge. Okay, so this was about playing the advocate for Krishna. It's so gratifying. He doesn't need any. Some people tell me, you have to defend anything to do with divine. I say, see, divine doesn't need defense. But it gives me a joy. It's something like Arjun. Do you think he needs Arjun to fight the battle? Or Hanuman to win against Ravana? But it's a joy given to if you want to be. So why should there be only devil's advocate? There should be God's advocate. Anyways. So she says, the general argument is, but I see it, I touch it, I feel it, consequently it is true. They should, on the contrary, tell themselves, I see it, I touch it, I feel it, consequently it is false. Now you see, shock laga. How the mind begins to spin. We are at opposite poles and there is no way of coming to an understanding. Because we go by what we see and it's so easy to be deceived. And therefore, what she's saying by that is false means this is not, the truth is much deeper. For Sri Aurobindo, true knowledge is, and people can be so easily misled by all the fantastic stories, by all the things, they can be misled. For Sri Aurobindo, true knowledge is precisely knowledge by identity, and wisdom is the state one achieves when one is in this true knowledge. So now we see that, everything exists at several levels. Now, of course, philosophers like Kant, and they would say that there is the idea of the stone and the stone. But there are many things between the idea and the stone. Things exist in a typal state. That's the problem of this creationism and evolution. It is true that they exist in a certain, when the divine maps out in his timeless vision, and as this timeless vision descends into the play of timeless time, Trikal, so everything is arranged hierarchically. So if you go into that state, you will know the past and the future. There are steps which have been arranged by the master artist with a happy ending for sure. Eventually, but with challenging middle and with a mysterious origin. But from that origin, you can trace the entire thing is mapped out. So they exist in that world. That is the world of real idea, which is the supermind. From the real idea, they enter into the realm of the mind where forms are being given. And from there, they enter into the energy mode, forces, and then the form. So we can understand everything from the point of view of form or forces or qualities, what was called as phenomenon and nomen, and then idea, and behind the idea, the real idea or the truth which is held within them. That is how the divine sees. There is a whole beautiful essay why Krishna chose Arjun. Because outwardly he is neither Satyavadi like Yudhishthir, nor a pacifist like Gandhi, nor a, he doesn't embody those typical qualities that we believe are the hallmarks of a spiritual life. He is very regular, and that's the beauty of Arjun. You can identify with him, okay, to an extent, not like he is, of course, his concentration and skillfulness is par excellence. He is like first class, first super topper in his own field. At the same time, music, dance, many-sided personality. He is carried away by emotion. He is a very emotional being. So all that is there about Arjun. But he is not a Satyavadi like Harishchandra. He is neither a Mahatma like Vidur who can do all the Shastrarth, and he's not studied all that. And he's not a Drid Pratigya like Bhishma. He keeps taking some pratigyas and next is Krishna has to handle. So he's like that, But he's chosen. And there we see that Shri Krishna tells him, I have chosen you because as Nar Narayan, we have fought together the battle of the ages. Even Arjuna doesn't know it. But if we were to see outwardly, we would wonder. That's how Bhurishrava blames Krishna for many things. So we see that there is a way to understand things only superficially, but true knowledge comes by identity, and that alone is wisdom. In between complete identity and superficial knowledge, which is through senses, which is a completely distant, indirect knowledge, we have two other grades that Sri Aurobindo speaks of in the Life Divine, which some other time we can talk about. Reason always sets one thing against another and compels you to make a choice. It's very interesting. One against other. You see, and you have to make a choice. This or that. Now this is where the fallacy of the material versus spiritual life comes in. Because reason contrasts them. You can't have a material existence and spiritual. Equally, you can't have a spiritual life as well as a material life. It's just impossible. Reason cannot understand this. Often people ask such questions. People whose thought and reason are clear see all the differences between things. It is rather remarkable that reason can only work through differences. It is because one perceives the difference between this and that, one act and another, one object and another, that one makes decisions and that reason works. So recently also in Raipur, somebody asked me, Doctor Sahab, all this is fine, your talk and all, but tell me, how do you manage on one side psychiatry, doctor, and on other side science, so on other side spirituality? How do you manage? So I said, it has enriched me. Manage means it is good. So, spirituality enriches psychology. It enriches your worldly life. It enriches your relationship, because the spiritual man is peaceful, he is loving, he wants harmony. Won't his relationship be, much better? And he can connect with so beautifully, because he is not driven by personal desire, ambition, lust, interest. So, it will be much better. Same with the understanding of psychological things, like if a patient comes, so I become a witness and try to see what is behind it. So long back, this practice I have been doing. So it becomes inbuilt in your nature that you don't see by outer, but it tends to, the inner begins to reveal itself. So she says, just a few lines below, the first absolutely indispensable step is not to repeat more or less mechanically and without quite knowing what you are saying, that appearances are false. He's again reminding us, don't say it because I have said and Sri Aurobindo have said. One must understand it. You say it because Sri Aurobindo has told us so, but without really understanding it. And yet, when you want to understand something, you continue to look, to observe, to touch, to taste, and to feel because you believe there are no other means of observation. So, if we say it's the same thing like to drop reason prematurely, drop sensory knowledge, often sensory knowledge can become a trigger to go deeper and see the truth behind, like photograph. Now, when you see a photograph, photograph is through the senses. But it can become a means to go much deeper and the truth of a person can start getting revealed. So she's saying, don't just parrot it. Oh, this is all appearances. Just learn the deeper way of looking at things. It is only when you have had the experience of the reversal of consciousness, when you have gone behind these things, when you can feel, experience in the most concrete manner their illusory appearance, that you are able to understand. So this reversal of consciousness he says several times. For instance, every time we go to an ascent to a new height, say the higher mind or the illumined mind, there is a reversal. So we begin to look at the world very differently. Because what we have discovered within ourselves, we begin to discover in others. So for a blind man, everything is blind. But when you have a little bit of sight, you can see. Achha, there is light there also. Same with psychic. When there is a contact with the psychic being, there is a reversal. Then one begins to see the points of psychic contacts in others. Or when one has even discovered the inner being, like the three Madonnas, then you begin to see that here is a person who is a vibhuti of this kind. Because he has begun to go behind the appearances. So she says, until you have the experience, you have had the experience, you can read all the aphorisms, repeat and learn them, have faith in them and still not perceive. They have no reality for you. So she is reminding us, read but put it into practice. All these appearances remain the only way of coming into contact with the outer world and of becoming aware of what it is. So this is what that story of fable of Sri Ramakrishna, that elephant Brahman and the disciple Brahman, not bothering about the Mahavat Brahman. The story we all know, so I'm not repeating this story. So she says that this is one part, and then I'll just come to how to have the experience. He says you must go and practice it and have the experience. We read, we try to understand, we explain, we try to know. But a single minute of true experience teaches us more than millions of words and hundreds of explanations. So the first question is how to have the experience, how to know what is going on inside, within, how to identify, have the knowledge with identity. To go within yourself, that is the first step. Because only what we discover inside, when we have discerned the play of forces inside us, then we can discern the play of forces outside us. What we have not observed within us, we cannot observe in others. What we value within ourselves, we end up valuing in others. There are people who judge by your outer wealth. There are equally people who judge by your poverty. So they start believing that somebody who has thrown away all his wealth is a spiritual man. This is another kind of dogma. Or when they see you in riches, they believe you are not spiritual. Why? Because spiritual man is supposed to be poor. So you have to get rid of all these mental conceptions. And then go within, and then you can see that all the things that move us, stir us, and then go deeper and deeper. To go within yourself, that is the first step. And then, once you have succeeded in going within yourself deeply enough, to feel the reality of that which is within, it takes time. So sometimes one has to just fix a time and just at that moment just go within. Doesn't matter. Say 100 times one is not able to go within. Still fix that time and go within. Then later on it will be like often you can, often you cannot. Or often you can, sometimes you cannot. Doesn't matter. Many people give up. Don't give up. Make it a habit. So this way, after some time, and of course it should be something which should be an ongoing process, but at least this way, slowly and slowly, something opens inside. Initially difficult because As the Upanishad says, all the gates of the consciousness of the jiva are turned outward. Through the senses, they automatically flow outward. So, a practice which goes with it is called pratyahar, to learn to withdraw and not be carried away by every. So, people who are often, running with appearance, oh, see, it's so nice, oh, see that, must understand that this is not very helpful to the inner life. While you are seeing everything, try to stay focused inside. Otherwise, one will be just carried away with every appearance. So, this is where unless we look at everything and go deep into it, that's another aspect. There are two ways of concentration to discover the divine. One is within and one is outside in objects. But Sri Aurobindo says it's very difficult to do that because this is accessible easily. This subjective space is easily accessible to us. And one can do both. So, and then once you have succeeded in going within yourself deeply enough to feel the reality of that which is within, to widen yourself progressively, systematically, to become as vast as the universe and lose the sense of limitation. So, she is giving us two practices. One is deepening, the other is widening. One can do them together or do them alternately. And for this, we can take the help of images. Just the image of mother being inside. I am giving one image, but each one will probably find their own. And then she is becoming vast, virat, and containing the entire universe. Just few moments of practice is so liberating. So, to try to come in contact with the presence within, and then that vast presence. And then even myself and all the world is within her. That's the Vishwarup Darshan. That's why the chapter 11 is so important. Otherwise, one finds it why it is suddenly superimposed in the Gita. It's a very important chapter. Because there, if we really meditate upon that vision, that the divine is reality is all around, surrounding everything, and everything is in the divine, then it is so liberating and so automatically, by the very fact that everything is entering into him and emerging out from him, he is the source, the origin, the goal, the path, the grand culmination. So, to widen ourselves, to become vast. These are the first two preparatory movements. So, to go within and then to widen ourselves. And these two things must be done in the greatest possible calm, peace, and tranquility. So, parallel movement along with that is to keep trying to call peace, calm, not to be troubled, agitated. And in the beginning, if there are certain things which agitate and excite us, keep away from that. I mean, otherwise, there is no end to. Straight away, we should not say that I'll do yoga in the battlefield. Okay, it is to be done in the battlefield. But learn to first practice inner peace. Then, yes, in the battlefield also peace is there because you will find Krishna is with you. So there is no question of any disturbance. There will be delight, in fact, peace and delight. This peace, this tranquility brings about silence in the mind and stillness in the vital. So if we keep calling peace, calm, tranquility cultivated, like a madman, mother says, keep calling peace, 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 shanti, 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 shanti. Calm is the base, and after some time, all becomes tranquil. The mind becomes relatively free of discursive thoughts. And the vital becomes freed of all the restlessness. So when this happens, then we are ready for true wisdom. In a restless vital, in a discursive mind which is jumping from one topic to another, sometimes it's painful to see how people discuss all inanities, surface things. One topic to another, sometimes it could be food, sometimes something, God knows what. So, if the mind remains like that, it can forget about wisdom. But we are here for wisdom and not for knowledge alone. So, she says, this effort this attempt must be renewed very regularly, persistently. So that's what she reminds, regularly and persistent. Regularly means there is a time which you have fixed for it. And with regularity, one is pursuing it. Persistently means that, well, regardless of the effect, I am going to persist. So to persevere, fix a time regularly when one will go and try to sit within and call peace and try to enter into a vastness. And after a certain lapse of time, which may be longer or shorter, you begin to perceive a reality that is different from the reality perceived in the ordinary external consciousness. So this experience will come, 100% will come. So, of course, this is a fact which everyone has said, and it's a fact of experience, that if you persist, it may take few months, maybe few years, depending on each one's. A day will come when suddenly like a opening happens, like, the sky opens to light. So suddenly vast horizons appear, certain things, or one is drowned in a stillness, in a peace that is so overwhelming, and then one stays in it. So this experience will come. That's when the reversal starts. After that, because once the opening is made, then it's a different story. One may be anywhere and everywhere, and yet that wisdom has become operative because you have upgraded the system. So she says, naturally, by the action of grace, the veil may suddenly be rent from within. This can also happen. Like Arjun. Suddenly it was rent from within. That's when there is a special work to be done. The divine wants you, and now why that is so, we don't know. Grace is the incalculable factor. So it may happen like that also. So there are two ways, effort and the grace, but both combine it. Ultimately it is grace that answers. Naturally, by the action of grace, the veil may suddenly be rent from within, and at once you can enter the true truth. But even when that happens, in order to obtain the full value and full effect of the experience, you must maintain yourself in a state of inner receptivity. Value of the experience is so important. People have seen light, they have heard sounds, but they don't understand it. I have seen people who say that when they were entering and they had some experience, but they think it is happening in the cells because they have read the agenda. But it's a well-known experience. When the inner being opens, these experiences do come. Because the right value we can't place. There are people who think this is the ultimate truth. So the true value of these things do not come. For instance, I know of a person who kept telling everyone that, when he had a vision of Sri Aurobindo coming in the navel lotus and he saw blue light going around, emerging from there like a fountain. It's very interesting. But he could never really place the true value of this experience. He just, I had a vision. Now that's one thing, but to understand its real sense is almost like a dream language. It's to be, why its value is to be known, because then we treasure it in the right way. It becomes truly useful to change us. Otherwise it can work the other way around. You must maintain yourself in a state of inner receptivity for the full effect. And to do that, it is indispensable for you to go within each day. So that's what she says, a practice one must do regularly, persistently, go within, and of course take the help of Naam and Rup, name of the divine, image of the divine, or a mantra, or all of them together. She has said, concentrate in the heart and go within. Or one can concentrate in the head anywhere, not necessarily only Bhrumadra, or above the head, or all the three together. It doesn't matter. But by whatever means that comes naturally to go within. And then, of course, from there to universalize the consciousness. And as I said, to each one it works differently. For me, what helps is the Divine Mother becoming vast, containing the universe. Becoming vast means perceiving, my mind is able to perceive like that. And then everything tends to vanish. It's so amazing. So many things can vanish which trouble us, and so initially that's how it is. Later on it becomes, once the opening is made, it becomes so easy to contact at any point of time. So we'll close with this. It is indispensable for you to go within each day. Thank you.